Call the meeting to order. Public comment. We don't have anyone signed up for public comment, so we'll move on to 3, approval of the November 3rd, 2021 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes.
Supervisor Mass, move to approve.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Lamont.
Lamont with a second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Policy issues, discussion, and potential committee determination. Amendment of the 2021 CIP for courtroom and jail audio-video enhancements. There's obviously an attachment on there. You can look at that, and I'll turn it over to Chad.
This is Administrator Leonard. Before Chief Deputy Billup begins his presentation, I just want to add a little bit of context. All of you, when you reviewed the 2022 proposed budget, you'll recall that there were not any ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, that were expended as a result of the proposed budget. However, I did make reference within that document to several projects to let you know that they were coming and that administration, along with various departments, would be bringing them. This is the first of those projects. It is to do some updates relative to our courtrooms, as well as to the jail for audio-video enhancements to enhance our court operations and mitigate the risk of spread of COVID-19 associated with the pandemic. So with that, I will kick it over to Chad, and there are other people in the room that have also worked on this project.
Thank you, Lance. Yes, I was going to acknowledge that Judge Huber is here today. The interim clerk of courts, Kelly Schremp is here, as is Jerry Klein, the director of the CCIT. The 4 of us all worked together on this project in an effort to come up with what we believe is the best plan for Marathon County. Now, what makes us a little bit unique is that our courtrooms are not all designed exactly the same. Those of you that have been in the courthouse for any length of time, I think we've got volume now. Those of you that have been in the courthouse for any length of time know that if you walk into branch 2 or branch 1, it looks very different from branch 4 or branch 5, which means that the solution that we put into each one of these courtrooms may be slightly different. But at the end of the day, they all have to work the same. So what we've done is we have worked as a group in order to come up with a plan. There's a vendor that we have reached out to in order to give us some drawings of what a courtroom might look like. Those drawings are in your packet in the CIP proposal that was put forward, that is being put forward to you. Now, what we don't know is exactly what each courtroom will cost. We have looked at 2 different variations of courtroom, and they fall within, I'll just say, a window of about $10,000 of each other, give or take. We anticipate that each courtroom will run about $70,000 in order to set up with the cameras, the electronic equipment, interfacing all of the technology to the state's court reporting system, which is called ADAR, and having all of those systems work efficiently and in line with the state Supreme Court rules and state laws. At the end of the day, when this project is all done, we anticipate that the total cost of the project will be right around $630,000. This budget includes renovations to the jail in order to ensure that there are, in essence, 3 jail courtrooms available to the courts at all time, as well as the courtroom setups, wiring and cabling that will have to be done in the building, as well as a contingency that's built in order to cover any overages that may come up. One of the obstacles we're going to face going forward is that, like anything else in the supply chain right now, it might be very difficult for us to get the technology. So Jerry Klein has already been working with his vendors, and what we are prepared to do is, once we have an approval to move forward with the project, is begin work on 2 of the courtrooms, make sure that they function as we want them to, and once we know we have a system that is acceptable to the courts, we would move forward with the rest of the project, completing all of the circuit court branches, the hearing rooms, and the jail. Did I miss anything?
I don't think you missed anything, Chad. One thing I'll say is, like Chad said, the supply chain, I'll add one more little wrinkle. This might not surprise you, but there are a lot of other counties and a lot of other governments looking to spend money on the same stuff with their American Rescue Plan Act funds. A great number of them did with their CARES funds. They made audio-video upgrades to things like municipal courtrooms, circuit courtrooms, rooms like the one we're in today. Marathon County itself made upgrades to a number of our conference rooms to enhance our ability to do remote meetings, and this is no different. So the reason we're bringing this as a CIP request to amend the 2021 CIP is to get started as soon as possible. Again, the funding mechanism put forth in the request is American Rescue Plan Act funds. So the next steps, what we're asking for you to do today is to recommend amendment of the 2021 CIP to provide for this project and make that recommendation to move forward to the HR, Finance, and Property Committee, which would review this at its next meeting before it would be reviewed by the full board. Again, according to your process, that's kind of the iteration of things that would be required to amend the existing 2021 CIP. And with that, Mr. Chair, if anyone has any questions, Chad and the rest of the team would be happy to answer them.
I really don't have questions, but I would like to mirror what Lance just said. So I was actually at another county today on the same thing. You're correct. I deal with a lot of counties, and all of them are doing this. And it's not just so much even the audio visual, but also making the courtrooms different so that it flows better. A lot of the stuff even is stuff for flow. So with that, any questions I guess you had for Chad or Lance? The quick thing I guess I would say is I would for sure look at inflation as far as these budgets. I know I've been putting on budgets, and right now budgets are, you might as well, depending on what commodities are doing, just for instance, HVAC I was seen was one of the things there. A sheet of tin went from like $60 to $200 in like 2 weeks. And then it'll go back down, and so it's kind of crazy the way the things are fluctuating now. So budgets are pretty tough, and I'm sure I know who they probably looked at for getting these budgets, so they're close now, but be careful because they could go way wacko.
And to that point, I can tell you that we received notice today that we have another CIP project that is out there for next year that we need to make a commitment on this year as soon as the board approves it. And it's our Motorola radios for the jail. That is an approved CIP project. If we don't have that quote in by the end of the year, 8% increase on everything. So everything is, to that point, is becoming very timely, and we need to stay on top of it.
Matt, if I can ask Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Jerry.
I just wanted to quick add, if you're wondering what's been going on for the last couple of months, what we've been using, what the judge and the courts have been using is basically a laptop and the microphone on a laptop. And that doesn't provide a very good experience. So what this really addresses is all of the microphones are attached to the video system, much like this room is, and it adds 2 cameras, or there'll be multiple cameras in there. So it's a significant movement towards a professional look and a better experience for everybody involved.
This is Administrator Leonard, and one thing to add on that, certainly it'll be a better experience, but I think it's important to note that also, like Chad said, there's existing Supreme Court rules relative to how court is supposed to operate, and a lot of those things, like everything, over the last 18 months to 2 years, were put on hold with emergency rules. But those are not the rules that will be in effect forever. This really sets us up to be in a position where we can utilize some of the efficiencies that we identified during the pandemic, video court, enhance our use of that for not only defendants, but also for staff. I've had numerous conversations with Judge Huber about, what is the impact of that DAR system, that audio system for court reporters. It can allow for a court reporter to do reporting remotely, but your audio system, needs to be of a higher quality than what we have. The experience right now does not allow for virtual court reporting. We tried that, didn't work well. This really does put us on more even footing with a lot of the counties that have made these investments in the past. And it also has operational benefits like Chad and the team drafted in that supporting document, where it should allow for us to make fewer transports from other facilities, to allow individuals in other facilities to remote into our system, and also limit the need for us to take individuals from our current jail and walk them down public hallways to get into the court system. So there's a lot of benefits here. And again, I think it's going to be the first of many ARPA-funded projects that will come before the board.
Supervisor Mask,
Go ahead, Gene.
if there are no more, there's no more discussion about this right now, I'd move to amend the 2021 CIP for courtroom and jail audio video enhancements.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
This is Supervisor Jacobson. I'll second.
Supervisor Jacobson with a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, thank you, Chad. Lance, might as well stay right up there. Operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution, none. Educational presentations, outcomes monitoring report. Marathon County Shelter Home, update on continuing evaluation of the service delivery options. As you recall, Lance mentioned something about the shelter home a couple meetings ago, or yeah, a couple weeks ago, I should say. So I guess this is just an update by Chad and see what we're doing here, so.
Sure. I just want to update everyone on where we're at. And I think the important thing to note here is that this is a conversation that's been going on for quite some time. We had began discussions about the future of the shelter home as part of the priority-based budgeting process back, I want to say, probably almost a year ago, maybe even longer than that, when we began those discussions. The point that we are at in those in the decision-making is we have staff who have elected to take jobs elsewhere. That is a product of the ongoing decisions that we're making. One of them took a job with social services. Another one has gone out into the private sector. That private sector job is exactly what we discussed at our last meeting, where we're seeing staff leave in order to go pursue other opportunities that are more beneficial to them and their families. But what that did was that took the staffing at the shelter home from 6 down to 4. And running the shelter home is a 24/7 operation. There has to be somebody there all the time. It is impossible to run the shelter home with only 4 staff members. So the question then becomes, well, do we hire new people to fill that role when we don't know what the future holds? Would you hire someone and then give them that job for 2 or 3 months and say, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to relocate you to a different job in the county, or let you go, or whatever it might be? And we were not comfortable doing that. So in essence, what we've done is we've put on hold the decision on the shelter home from the perspective that we don't know what we're going to do out there right now. All we can tell you is that right now we don't have the staff to run it, and in the interim, social services is working on placing the children that would normally go there in other placement. When we look at priority-based budgeting and what that shelter home means to the sheriff's office, it is very different from what it means to social services. When I prioritize the shelter home from the sheriff's office perspective, it is not a mandated service that the sheriff's office has to provide. However, if I'm social services, it is a mandated service that has to be provided. It's just a matter of how do we provide it. So what we're doing right now is we're looking at a number of different options. Option 1 is Marathon County can make the decision to continue running a shelter home, and we would staff it and run it as we always have. Another option might be that we look for vendors, people in the private sector who would want to come in and run the shelter home as a business, and then use opportunities that they have in order to offset costs in order to make it profitable. The third option that's out there is Marathon County could do like most counties do in the state of Wisconsin, and they could contract with that service from another county or another private entity. That third option comes with it a number of challenges, which include social workers taking these children out of county to different places, children being placed further from their parents and their homes, attorneys having a harder time working with these kids because they're not local. So we know that option number 3 is the least favorable of all of our options, but it's still an option that exists, and everyone should know that. What we know is that in order to run the shelter home, hard cost, I'm not including keeping the lights on, keeping the heat on, those types of facility-related expenses. Expenses related to staff and supplies runs Marathon County about $550,000 a year. What we would charge another county, and I use this as an example because what we charge other counties is an agreed upon amount that's shared across the entire state. So we all agree that $200 a day is the rate at which we would charge another county to use our service. So if we were to take the number of children that use our service here in Marathon County and apply that $200 rate, we figured that on average, we would probably spend about $150,000 a year delivering that service. Again, we're spending about $550,000. So if I apply the priority-based budgeting model from a sheriff's office perspective, it's good that we're looking at doing this. Now, we've been in conversation with other vendors that are in this type of a market, that do this type of work, to see if this is even viable. How would they do it here if they're doing it in other parts of the state? And what we're coming to learn is that if we were to build a consortium of counties, Marathon maybe, we know that Winnebago is currently in the same predicament we are. They just closed their shelter, and now they're looking for beds. Maybe what we could do is partner with other counties, make this so that we all share in the cost and we all pay our true cost. And it becomes a shared resource amongst a number of counties. So the challenge in that is that takes time in order to do all of that research. And I believe Krista Jensen was going to call in. I hope that she was able to get on. I know she's trying to jump between meetings here today, but that's something that Social Services has said that they're willing to do, is go out and try to make those connections, see if there's interest, and we could look at that as an option for Marathon County. So what I'm trying to do is urge caution that people don't just rush to conclusions, that we've come to a decision point and we're moving on and we're not thinking anymore about what's going on. That's not the case. This is a very complicated issue. It's a complicated challenge, and you're trying to cross county departments that have conflicting interests in it, but we're all trying to work together in order to come up with the best solution for Marathon County. So I hope I summarized that. And Krista, I would encourage you to fill in any gaps I might have missed or differing viewpoints, because I know that we come from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that we've done a great job on collaborating on this project and trying to determine the needs for both of our agencies and for our community as a whole. I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't have anything additional to offer. We're looking at all possibilities. Nothing is ruled out at this point in time. So we're just really evaluating what are the needs that we have in our community, what are the needs that our state has, and what financially makes the most sense for everybody, and what do we have staffing available for. We do know if we have to transport kids out of Marathon County to other county shelter homes, not only does that take resources for the social workers through the county, it's likely going to take resources with our law enforcement officers who are going to need to assist us in transporting those children out of county.
Didn't I see where there are only 4 in there right now?
Today, there are only
how many kids are in there right now?
There are 2 kids out there today.
2.
And we average 1 to 2 Marathon County kids at any given time.
And how far do they go when they're shipped out?
We've never had to do that, so I don't know what Krista knows about areas or who we might be able to do that work with.
Right. There's only a few shelter homes left throughout the state, so it really depends on who would have availability and their location. Typically, we're at least going to be an hour away from us at a very minimum.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, this is
Go ahead,
Supervisor
Brent.
Jacobson. Just a question for Chad. Chad, on some of the options you mentioned, what's the present time frame you think to have some more information back to us on your recommendations?
What we left our last meeting with, which was last Wednesday we met. It was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Social services is going to take until the beginning of January, and I don't remember the exact date we set for a meeting, in order to explore the opportunities with other counties. And we believe that once that work has been done, we'll have a really good idea of what our options are, because then we'll know if we have partners in this or not. So I would say that because you have an early meeting in January, it would probably be the February meeting where we would come back to you and report that out.
Okay, thanks, Chad.
And I think that would be conducive because next month we have some bigger items that we're going to be dealing with, actually with Health and Human Services at a joint meeting. So I think February would be good. And that would be, Lance, are you saying, I just heard you, so that would be a good opportunity to have a joint for that one also? Okay. So, further questions? All right, with that, we'll go on to 6B. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Krista. Regional Forensic Science Center, Neighborhood Investment Fund Grant Application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we have the chair of the Regional Forensic Science Center Task Force, Chair McEwen, is here to answer any questions, but really this is just an informational update. I gave this same update to the HR Finance and Property Committee at its last meeting, just making you aware of a grant application that Marathon County has filed. As I'm sure all of you know in grave detail, we have been working on developing a plan, an operational plan for a regional forensic science center for some time. Chair McEwen and that task force have done some great work. We have a business plan. We've been engaged with our partners from our medical systems, as well as the Medical College of Wisconsin. We've been engaged with various counties, outreach to the District Attorneys Association. Jess and her team have done a fantastic job, and we've met with a lot of legislators about it, a lot of local legislators. And we always come back to this, we really think this is a good thing, it's a community need, but we don't have the ability, how do we service debt? And there's nothing within our business plan that really allows us to service debt associated with any construction for such a facility. As all of you know, in accordance with a lot of the American Rescue Plan Act funds that came into the state of Wisconsin, the state has released numerous grant opportunities, one of which was the Neighborhood Investment Fund grant. I believe that was $200 million that was released in October of this year. It was announced, the grant program was announced. The date for grant submissions, the initial date was November 4th. So we didn't have a whole lot of time to, once we became aware of it, to get that grant application submitted. They extended the date out, I believe, to November 10th, but nevertheless, it was a very short turnaround to evaluate whether or not we were eligible and get that grant submitted. So we did ultimately submit a Regional Forensic Science Center grant. The total grant, as you can see from the document, the grant document in your packet, was in excess of $9 million. Essentially, it provides for the construction of the facility, which, as you'll recall from our numerous meetings about this topic, the projections through our business plan relative to operations are that it would be operations neutral from a financial perspective. That is, it would not increase nor significantly decrease the current levy allocation that goes to the medical examiner's office for them to carry out the work that they do each and every year. So just making you aware of that grant application, we hope to learn whether or not we are going to receive those funds in the next several weeks. I anticipate hearing before the end of the year. Again, Chair McEwen as well as Board Chair Gibbs have done a good job reaching out to local legislators to really advocate for this project and seek out additional opportunities, but this is just making you aware of this grant application that we submitted at the end or early last month. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? All right, if not, we'll move on to 6C, Marathon County Jail Pandemic Response Update.
Chad is on his way up to the podium. As all of you know, the pandemic is still with us, so we wanted to give you an update as to some of the things that the jail continues to do a great job addressing, and similar to our item relative to the shelter home. I sent an email earlier about the shelter home because we anticipated a news story. You may have seen a news story recently about the things that the jail has been doing to mitigate the risk of spread of COVID throughout the facility. So that's the reason we're coming back, to keep you informed.
Thank you, Lance. As everyone knows, right now throughout the community, there's been an increase in the spread of COVID. Your neighbors, your friends, your family, I'm sure you're hearing about it. And we can't forget that oftentimes it's our neighbors, our friends, and our family that actually come to our Marathon County Jail. And when they come here, they bring along with them the risk that COVID can also come into our facility. COVID has been present in the jail and has not left the jail at all since the pandemic began. When we had our first cases in early 2020, it started and it hasn't stopped. So jail staff, who, and I in no way want to minimize the work that's being done by our medical professionals in the area across the country, but I will tell you that the strain that this has had on staff within the jail is significant. We have staff that come here every day knowing full well that they're going to be in an environment where COVID is present. They're constantly taking precautions and taking the risk of taking it back home to friends and family. We have a number of staff who just returned to work today after having been on COVID protocols. One staff member I went up to the jail and met with earlier today shared with me how sick he and his whole family were, and to the point where he actually got bed sores on his ear from how much he slept and laid in bed. So it's a real serious concern and a problem here within our employment circles as well as in the jail. The good news is that we've done a fairly good job of isolating it within the jail. Now, about a week and a half ago, we were alerted that there was a spread starting in the jail, and at that time there were close to 50 inmates that had tested positive for COVID. Yesterday, 12 of those inmates came off of COVID restrictions, so they have tested negative and they're clear. We have 6 more who will be coming off of COVID protocols tomorrow, and we have 33 inmates who remain on COVID protocol. And what that means is that we've now had to severely restrict the movement within our jail and the ability of officers to bring people in off the street for low-level offenses. Prior to this, we had actually released some of the COVID restrictions in the jail and allowed for what I will say are normal operations in the jail, where police officers from all across the county were able to bring people in for warrants, child support warrants, probation violations, new arrests, and that was going quite well up until a week and a half ago when all of a sudden we had 50+ inmates test positive. So we are back on COVID protocols. We have a schedule of when all of these inmates will be coming off of their restrictions, if you will, COVID restrictions, and we've isolated it to blocks. Depending upon how the testing goes tomorrow, we may be able to relax some of the restrictions that we have currently in the jail as far as officers bringing inmates, people in, the arrestees in off of the street. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., we actually have an area police of chiefs meeting where the sheriff and I will be meeting with the chiefs, and we'll be able to discuss that further with them and hope to have more clarity in the morning about where we'll stand as far as the jail is concerned. Right now, we only have one staff member who is currently out due to COVID, and everyone else has since returned to work. As of last week, though, I believe that was 6 staff members who were out. So as far as that's concerned, we're doing much better. And I'm very happy to report that as of this morning, none of the inmates and none of our staff are gravely, gravely ill at this point. They're definitely sick, and they're definitely feeling the impacts of COVID, but they're not hospitalized and in that sort of a condition, so that is good news. Is there anything else you'd like me to touch on, Lance?
Nope, that's it, thanks.
Anything else for Philip? All right, thanks again.
Thank you.
Move on to 7, next meeting time, location, announcements, and agenda items. I guess I'd like to take a brief moment of silence. I know we lost Arnie last month, and I just wanted to he was on this committee, loved this committee, talked about this committee a lot. So I'd like to take a brief moment of silence for Arnie. All right, thanks on that. Another thing I'd like to possibly put on the agenda, and I guess I'd want some real quick input from I don't know if I can do this with it not being on here, but Pledge Allegiance. A lot of people have asked if we do the Pledge Allegiance before the committee meeting. I know we do it at town board, county board. This is considered a standing meeting, a committee meeting, so we typically don't. I just wanted maybe some input from the members of the committee, seeing if that was something they'd like to entertain.
This is Supervisor Mask.
Go ahead.
Normally, we just don't ever do it, but I suppose it wouldn't be such a bad thing. And it doesn't really matter to me one way or the other. I don't know why anyone would think that we are any less patriotic because we don't do it at our committee meetings.
Yeah, I agree. It was asked by a number of people, so I guess I'm just seeing what the input was for the committee. Anything from the other two supervisors?
Yeah, Matt, this is Brent. I think it's a good idea. I wouldn't have a problem doing it. I agree with Gene. I don't think we're any less patriotic because we don't do it, but it doesn't hurt to do it more and more.
Mr.
Bruce?
Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess if we're going to do that, can we have the moment of silence too since we can't say a prayer, but people can do what they want?
Yeah, if we're doing that, it wouldn't be a big issue to do both.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
I so move.
I don't think we can put it because it's not an actionable item, so I'll put it on.
That's
I'll decide whether to have them put it on the next meeting or not. We'll talk, but with administration. So thanks for the input. Other than that, does anyone have any committee members are asked to bring future ideas? Anyone have any future ideas they'd like to bring forward or something on the agenda? If not, you can also do it later to me or Lance or Tasha. Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to, again, keep you informed, and it'll be on your next meeting agenda. We should have more information from the university program relative to the work they're doing with emergency management on evaluating emergency medical services and delivery options within Marathon County. We should be getting that information in the next week to 10 days, and we will make sure to get that on a future meeting agenda to have Phil and perhaps some university students make those presentations to this committee.
Thank you. If there's nothing on A, next meeting is Wednesday, January 5th at 1:30.
Is that the joint meeting?
No, it's gonna be next month would be I think we're gonna have probably joint meetings in, yes, January we will actually. Yes, correct. We're gonna have a January and February, Gene. We're gonna probably have one also because of what Chad just brought forward with the shelter home. And then next month, yes, we will be our normal meeting will still be 1:30 and we're probably gonna go to like 2:00. And then we're going to have a joint meeting, and then after we're done with the joint meeting, I assume Health and Human Services, if they wanted to do something short, they would do that after that meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? If not, I'll take 8.
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carried. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for having that moment of silence for Arnie. That's very appreciated.
You're welcome.